Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Okay, now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, and he is an absolutely amazing man, and his name is Ted Cohen.
Hi, I'm Ted. I'm an alcoholic. When Lucy took her cake up here, you know, she did that strip, and I kind of felt like doing something similar, except nobody would see it, you know, but anyway. Okay. That wasn't too good, was it? Okay. It's really an honor for me and a privilege to be at the new Rodeo meeting. I was at the very, very first Rodeo meeting when it first started on Rodeo, and I see it's been kicked out of a few churches since then. You know. Rodeo, they used to park their Rolls Royce on the lawn, you know, and all kinds of other stuff. And, it started as a resentment from Roxbury. I remember a few guys got a coffee pot and they said, we're going to have a meeting, and we went over to Rodeo, and I'm happy to see it's still going because AA is still going. I was hoping they'd keep the drapes open here. You saw all the furniture they had there before they pulled the drapes. That makes it a Rodeo meeting, see. I was talking to a guy's sponsor tonight before coming over here, and I told him I was coming over here to Rodeo, and he says, if you're going to Rodeo, talk about relationships. That's what goes on in West LA. A lot of folks on the East Coast cannot understand AA here in Los Angeles. I don't know, I have a lot of friends back there, and I get there quite a bit, and they're just amazed at AA out here. In New York, some of the groups I go to, if you're a newcomer, they don't even let you share or talk for the first year. They tell you to sit down and shut up, that you don't know anything. And these guys tell me, I can't believe it. One guy told me he came out to a meeting out here in West LA. He said, if you're 6 months sober and you wear a pair of cut-off jeans, you could be elected secretary. If you're a year sober, you could start a recovery house over in Malibu. And you could charge $40,000, you know, a month to people to give them a few bananas and put them in a van and drive them to an AA meeting. You know. So. I saw in the newspaper today where a lady had died. She was in AA, and she had they call them minders. You know, is that a new name? When I got sober, we never had anybody called a miner. M-I-N-D-E-R. They charge 10 grand a week to sit with you, you know, while you're hurting and getting sober. When I got sober, they called it 12-step work. So AA has changed a little bit since when I first got here. So anyway, this guy told me to talk about relationships, and a couple people during the break told me to talk about relationships, and I want to do that. I don't know a lot about relationships. I don't even know anything about sex. I'm a Jewish guy, you know. What do we know? When I first got sober the first year, I got up enough courage to talk to a girl. I was really shy, and I said to her, you know, you and I ought to have an affair. And she said, why? And I said, well, you look like you could use the rest. So, but people back east, I'm going to stop telling that one. I just think. People in the East Coast are still amazed at the Roxbury and Rodeo meetings and the big Brentwood meeting. They tell me, one guy told me, he says, yeah, I've been to that Thursday night Brentwood meeting, he said, you know, he had about 400 people there. About 30 of them were in there listening to the speaker, and about 350 were outside in the parking lot and in front, you know, working on relationships. This is what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. So some guys told me, talk about what people want to hear about in AA. They want to hear about relationships, wealth, and happiness. Okay? Isn't that important? Okay. Well, I'll touch on each one. Rodeo is a great meeting. It's always been a happy meeting. I always crack up when I come here. And you could see that relationships are very important part of the Rodeo meeting, because before they drew these curtains, they even had the beds back there. Did you notice? They have beds up here right on the stage. I mean, how convenient. Especially for newcomers who don't have money, you know. So anyway, enough of that. I grew up, I was a Depression kid, and I grew up in the Depression when they didn't have, there was no food stamps, no welfare, no unemployment, no nothing. You just, people were either starving or working, you know, it was a deal. And my dad was a working guy. They were immigrants from Europe. And I didn't know anything at all about feelings. We talk a lot about feelings here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what they were. The closest I think that we ever got to talking about feelings when I was growing up was during one winter day, my mother said to me, "You must be feeling cold. Will you put a jacket on?" And that's what I thought a feeling was. And I didn't know what it was until later when I got into college and I was taking some psychology courses, and I found out that feelings are not about feeling cold or warm. You know, they go a little deeper than that. And so I grew up into adulthood with no training as to what a feeling was or how to even talk about what I was feeling. I went to work when I was about 11 years old. Us Depression kids, nobody made us do that, but we knew there was no money and, you know, nobody had any money, so we were doing all kinds of stuff. I grew up with a family of my own, and I never knew how to tell them what was going on with me. I wish that I had a camera. They did a show years ago called A Day in Your Life. They would start filming a guy from the time he woke up until he went to bed and stuff like that. And I used to wish that I had a camera in those days so I could turn it on when I woke up. I thought if I could carry this camera around with me and bring the film home at night, I would show the film to the people that I lived with. And if they could just see a film of a day in my life, they would know how hard it was out there in the jungle to try to earn a living so they could drive a nice car and go to the beauty shop and things like that. And then they would really love me and appreciate me because they would see what I was going through, because I never knew how to tell anybody what I was going through. Of course, I didn't have a camera like that. Today I have a video camera in a closet somewhere. If I wanted to film a day in my life, I could. I can't imagine anybody would want to watch it. So, but I don't have to have a camera today to tell you what is happening with me. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it's happened. I'm sure it's happened to all of you. Sometimes I will go out of my office for lunch. I'll bump into somebody from the program. We'll start talking, just like happened to me today, because I thought today I had the worst day of my life, before I got here, of course. But I've had worse days of my life before. You know, this was just another worst day in my life. And I'd be talking to this guy, and we talked for a while, and the guy would say, you know, you're on a dry drunk. You better get to a meeting. You're depressed. You better get to a meeting. And I kind of think for a second, and I say, geez, you know, I'm depressed. I'm on a dry drunk. I better get to a meeting. This is the sixth sense that we have about one another in Alcoholics Anonymous. I know as I'm standing here tonight, or if I'm sitting with a group of you over a cup of coffee, or talking to somebody over the phone, that if I say to you, I am hurting tonight, I'm in pain tonight, I know that I don't have to give you specific details, like my dog died, or the IRS shut down my office, or they repossessed my car, or my girlfriend or wife ran off with my best friend. I don't have to tell you that. I know as I'm standing here right now, if I say to you, I'm hurting tonight, I'm really hurting tonight, that you know where I'm coming from. This is the magnificence to me of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Only here in Alcoholics Anonymous, I believe, are we able to go down with each other to the very, very depths of our souls and know what is beating in another alcoholic's heart. Because I know when I tell you I'm hurting, not just I'm hurting, I could tell you something joyful happened too, you know. But I know if I say to you, I'm hurting tonight, that you know what is going on in my heart. And I hope when I hear you, that I know what is going on in yours. Only here in Alcoholics Anonymous are we able to go so deeply inside the other human being. So it's a big honor for me to be here with you tonight, and a big joy for me to be here with you. And you know, I heard in the, and this is just my opinion, whatever I say, you know, I was told long ago in Alcoholics Anonymous that the opinions of the speaker are only his or her own, that nobody speaks for Alcoholics Anonymous. There are no big shots here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and the highest, the very highest you can get here is sober. That's it. So, I'm so grateful that you're here tonight because I needed you very desperately today. I was driving through East LA about a week ago where I grew up, and I saw a lowrider car. I don't know if you see them. They have these little chains on the steering wheel. Any of you ever see those? On the back shelf, there's a little head. It's on a spring. You know, they used to sell them with Dodgers, LA Dodgers or Rams. On the back shelf of the car is a little head, goes like that. And these lowrider cars in East LA, they do something to the spring, so the car's going like that, and this head is going like this. And every time, I started to crack up when I saw that head because it reminds me so much of how Alcoholics Anonymous works. How could a bobbing head tell me how Alcoholics Anonymous works? Well, I'll tell you my experience. When I was new, it took me a few years. I'd go to the big, big meetings. I didn't want to go to a small meeting where they might ask me to share or open up or something. So I'd go to the big meetings, and you could hide out forever, as a matter of fact. And these guys would take me for coffee after the meeting, finally. They'd make me go to coffee with them. And when they got me to open up, all this stuff started pouring out of me, just pouring out of me like a dam bursting. I had so much stuff that I had never shared about. And these old-time guys, these old-timers, you know what they would do? They would just sit there, and they'd go, mm-hmm, uh-huh, mm-hmm, 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 and just bob their head up and down, just like those little lowrider things, mm-hmm, uh-huh. And after about 3 years of people just listening to me and going, mm-hmm, uh-huh, uh-huh. See, because I don't know if they understood what I was saying. Most of the time, we don't understand what newcomers are saying. They babble. And we kind of listen, go, uh-huh, whatever insanity is coming out of them. We figure after a couple of years, they'll make some sense. And these guys would just go, mm-hmm, uh-huh, uh-huh. And after 3 years, I got better. So to me, the miracle, the phenomenon of this program is about listening. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we learn how to listen to one another. And because someone is there to listen to us, we feel valued, we feel like we matter, we feel like like somebody cares about us, that we're loved, that we're not alone, that someone understands, and all these other hundreds and thousands of emotions that make us feel worthwhile, because someone is there to listen. And that's why I could understand today, which I couldn't for many years. I used to hear speakers from the podium say, to the audience, thank you for paying a 12-step call on me. And I would think, why is the speaker thanking the audience for paying a 12-step call on him? And it dawned on me, finally, that this program is about listening. So, in my opinion, I don't know that there's any great message that comes from the speaker to the audience. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But I think the real healing force in Alcoholics Anonymous comes from the listener to the person speaking. Because, for example, tonight, maybe there's 100 people in here allowing me to share my experience, strength, and hope with you. And by your being here tonight, you make me feel like my life matters. You make me feel worthwhile. You make me feel like I have a purpose in life. You make me feel that I'm loved, no matter what I say or do. By your just being here to allow me to share with you, and maybe bob your head up and down once in a while. You give me such a precious gift. And that's why I want to thank you guys for paying a 12-step call on me tonight, because I don't know about you, but I'm going to walk out of here feeling a whole lot better than when I came in, just because of the love you have shown me here. Thank you. I grew up over in, as I said, over in the East LA ghetto. I went to work very early in life. There was no alcohol in my house. If my folks had a bottle of wine, it could last a year, 2 years maybe. I didn't know what drunks were. I'm sure they were around. I had no idea what a drunk was. I was busy working as a young kid after school. I was always working, and I wanted to go to college, and I worked my way through college, going to night college, and I worked during the day on a lot of jobs, but I worked building that interchange downtown, construction, and I worked driving trucks across country, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I still didn't know a lot about alcohol. I didn't know anything about alcohol, I'll tell you the truth. I'm sure it was around me. I wanted to go to law school, and I managed to get into law school where I was going at night. I was working in the daytime down on the docks and doing all kinds of other work. And I didn't know a lot about alcohol. We'd go out on Friday night on payday or something, and the guys would have a beer, and maybe just to be one of the guys, I would have a beer, and maybe I'd drink a half a beer or something. It had no meaning in my life. I wound up at the age of 27. I was a lawyer. I had to go buy a suit. I was a little scared kid from the East LA ghetto, and I wound up in a law practice with a guy on the old Sunset Strip in the 50s, which was a very, very glamorous place. On the Sunset Strip, we used to get dressed up with a tuxedo or fur coats just to go out and have dinner sometimes. And I was this scared kid that didn't fit in. To tell you how sharp I was, I went out one night with another guy to celebrate my being a lawyer with my new suit. And us kids from, by the way, from East LA, we used to be scared going west of Vermont. You know, the people there had 2 pairs of pants and 2 pairs of shoes. I never had trouble as a kid knowing what to wear. It's just that one outfit, you know. So we'd get scared going west of Vermont. If you know where that is today, I get scared going east of Vermont because the city has changed. But anyway, we go to this restaurant up at Scandia's up there, and I didn't know what to order. I didn't know anything. I didn't even eat in a restaurant, I don't think. So we order, I'd seen on the menu baked Alaska, see? And also baked Alaska, which I thought was sockeye. I worked in a grocery store stocking those cans, Alaska sockeye salmon. And so I thought baked Alaska was like a baked salmon thing. And then I'd seen a movie where the guy ordered Caesar salad. I didn't know what that is. So we ordered Caesar salad and baked Alaska. The waiter left, kind of gave us funny looks. And while he was getting our dinner ready, I told my friend, I said, Jesus, for a fancy restaurant, they can't even afford matching silverware in here. They got a short fork and a long fork. And the fork I had, the silverware I had growing up, it said USN from the Army surplus from World War II. So this guy comes back with this baked Alaska. It was something they set on fire with rum. They throw a match in there and it light it and the thing lights up, you know. That's how sophisticated I was. I didn't know what was happening. And I was in partners with a fellow whose family owned a well-known saloon on the Sunset Strip. And it was a hangout for what they called a sporting crowd. It was ladies of the evening and guys who lived off ladies of the evening and bookmakers and hustlers. Nobody had a real job. Nobody had a real kind of job. But we'd make the rounds because we represented a lot of the clubs and restaurants along Sunset and La Cienega. And I used to be so shy all the time. I used to admire these guys that could talk to a girl and talk to her and, wow, romance her or ask her to dance. I was too scared. And I remember one night, it was somebody's birthday, and I remember having a couple of scotches. They were pouring drinks. It wasn't the first time I'd had a drink of scotch, but it was the first night I remember feeling it. So I had a couple of scotches, and man, after a couple of drinks of scotch, I felt like $1 million. I started doing that every night, just like in the movies, you know, Barbara Stanwyck, Humphrey Bogart. They had dinner, they had a smoke a cigarette and have a drink and martini. I started doing that every night, you know. And those 2 drinks or 3 drinks just filled that hole in my gut. It took all the fear away from me. After a couple drinks, I could ask a girl to dance. I could talk to a stranger about sports or the weather. After a couple drinks, I started to believe that I had been born over on the west side of town all along. I wasn't this scared ghetto kid. And alcohol worked for me. It worked. I remember, I was doing a lot of criminal law, and I remember I wanted to learn a lot about the human anatomy and physiology, and I was befriended by a very famous lawyer at that time who kind of took me under his wing, and he used to go up to San Francisco to the medical school and take me with him, and we used to watch autopsies and things, and I used to see on the autopsy table wet brain, the brain eaten up by alcohol, and we know that brain cells never regenerate. They told me that every time we take 1 ounce of alcohol, it kills about 10,000 brain cells. Those never go back. I saw hearts and livers and kidneys eaten up by alcohol. But I was a big fancy lawyer. I was a millionaire at the age of 33. I was living in a house up on Bel Air Road. How could this happen to me? I was immune. I used to go to the governor's house for dinner. I was a big shot, see? So how could I become an alcoholic? And I used to see every day the ravages of the disease of alcoholism in my law practice. I had a good guy that I knew real well. He was vice president of City National Bank. And I stood next to him in a courtroom where one day he was taken on a bus to prison for killing 2 people in a crosswalk while he was drunk. Maybe that same bus that I was to find myself on years later. See? So I used to speak a few times a year. Lately, I've spoken many times to groups with a fellow named John Vandekamp, who was the district attorney here in Los Angeles. And he's not an alcoholic, but a good friend of the alcoholic. And I used to remind him of the time back in 1966 when I was a big shot lawyer up on the Sunset Strip. And one day, 4 people came into my office, badly dressed. I knew they were cops, because cops in those days, we see Miami Vice now, the cops, they're sharp, they dress good. In those days, the cops would wear brown shoes with black socks or black shoes with brown socks. You could tell a cop, at least on the Strip where everybody dressed sharp, you'd see these guys. They were cops. So 4 cops are in my office. They told me to put out my hands. They put handcuffs on me. They put me in a car. They told me I've been indicted by the LA County Grand Jury on numerous counts of insurance fraud and theft and forgery and some other things I forget. And they took me down to the LA County Jail where I used to go almost every day visiting clients, and they had the audacity to book me and fingerprint me like a common criminal. And I came out on an appeal bond. I was standing in a courtroom in January of 1968, and I heard a judge sentence me to 14 years in prison. And they took me away on a bus to the LA County Jail to wait for that bus to go to the prison. And while I was in that county jail, I had to me what was somewhat of a spiritual experience. God, it's getting late. Well, anyway, this is my spiritual experience. I'll tell it quick. I'm laying there in the LA County Jail, and I flashed upon a scene that had happened about 4 years before. I was drinking every day now. I was drinking a fifth a day, a quart a day, and I used to like to go up to Vegas on Fridays and gamble and drink, and I'd go out to get half pints all the time so I wouldn't know how much I was drinking. And one day I went out to get a half pint, and I locked myself. I lost my keys, and we didn't have credit cards in those days, so I called up a guy that had a locksmith store, and he said he couldn't get out there. I called a few locksmiths, said they couldn't get out there. So I called a cat burglar that I knew, and I said, hey, Johnny, I want you to do a job for me, get in my office and open up my desk drawer so I could get a check. I want to go to the airport and go to Vegas. So he said, come get me. I went up and got him. He went in his apartment, and he came out of his apartment with a black, they called it a satchel, these black bags that physicians used to carry in those days when they made house calls. And we go to my office on Sunset there, and he took a piece of cellophane, just opened the front door of the building. The door flew open. We went into my office on a fourth floor. He took out another piece of cellophane or something, opened that office door. And then he bent down to get where this checkbook was, and he had a flashlight that had this black tape all over it so a small beam of light could come through and perhaps the police wouldn't see a big flashlight going off. And he pointed this beam of light on the keyhole of the desk I wanted him to open. Meanwhile, I had gone over and flipped on all the lights. The lights went on real bright, like here. And he yelled, shut him off, shut him off. He freaked out, just shut him off. Hey, John, it's cool. This is my office. The rent is paid. You know, we're like legal. And he said, you know, I know it. He says, he shook his head. He says, it just seems that I can't get used to working in the light. See, as I was laying in a jail cell, feeling helpless, hopeless, and worthless, waiting for the bus to prison, I just knew that if I was ever going to have any kind of life again, ever, that unlike that burglar who couldn't operate in the light, that I was going to have to shine a great big light upon myself and take a good, hard, cold look at who I was and what had got me to that horrible place. Because if I wasn't willing to do that, I would only repeat that drama over and over again. And what had got me there? I grew up, as I said, in the ghetto. I became a successful lawyer. I was a millionaire at 33. I was drinking more and more every day because it made me whole. I had found I had found that magic elixir in alcohol. Alcohol supplied everything to fill up that hole in my gut. I had been looking, and I said, where have you been all my life? I had a 4-year-old son that was killed in a fall, and I didn't handle that well. I just went deeper and deeper into this pit of alcoholism, and I was hanging around drinking in the morning with a doctor, an insurance adjuster from the State Farm Insurance Company, and me. And one morning, this insurance adjuster had a big checkbook who could write checks to people who got in accidents. He'd been with the company so long he could write a check for $35,000 on his own. And he had a checkbook with like 500 checks. But we were 3 drunks. We didn't need the money. We decided to rip off the State Farm Insurance Company for $112. It took us 2 days because we had to go back to the doctor's office to type up a phony medical report that this guy, we made up a name, Jose Morales, had been hurt in a car accident. And the doctor didn't want anybody to see us making up this phony thing, so he shut his office down, sent all his x-ray technicians and patients home. So after 2 days, where none of us went to work, we split up $112 apiece. And that's what brought me to that jail cell in January of 1968. Is that the insanity of the disease of alcoholism? I couldn't figure out, how could a guy that worked hard all his life and didn't need the money ruin his life, his career, go to prison, lose his law license for splitting up $112? And you guys told me, you said if I was an alcoholic, I was probably more sick than I was evil. And that alcoholics in the throes of the disease of alcoholism wind up doing a whole lot of things that they wouldn't do if they were not alcoholic. I came out of that jail cell on an appeal bond, hoping, knowing I was going to go to jail, but I could delay it for 2 or 3 years. I came out to find everything a shambles in my life. I'd gotten a letter from the Supreme Court that I was disbarred. The bank had called in my loans. My home was in foreclosure. My office had been shut down. My wife had run off with my bail bondsman. And I was walking around trying to figure out, I wanted to kill myself. I kept switching drinks. You told me your problem is you drink scotch. You should drink Kentucky bourbon, Jim Beam. I tried drinking everything, Harvey Wallbangers, whatever I drank, it had alcohol in it. And I just kept getting drunk. I decided to kill myself. I found another guy. I didn't want to be alone, even in death. I found another guy, sad as me. We decided to kill ourselves. We were walking into the ocean at Santa Monica very dramatically. He chickened out. He said the water was too cold. And he's sober in AA now, living in Washington. So I didn't want to do it myself. I left, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. A guy answered the phone. He said, would you like to go to a meeting tonight? And I said, well, yes, I would, but I don't have any old clothes. And he said, well, you just keep drinking and you will. So it was July 16th of 1968. I met him at the Brentwood meeting, the Thursday night Brentwood meeting. He came out of I thought it was a bar mitzvah or something. All these people were happy, clean, there was no fighting. And a guy came out, he said, are you Ted? I said, yeah. He said, I'm Hal. He said, you never have to drink again as long as you live, one day at a time. I've never had a drink again, one day at a time. It's been 37 years last Saturday. He took me for coffee after the meeting. They had in his car all these signs on his dashboard, tape with tape. Live and let live. Let go and let God. Easy does it, one day at a time. And they kept beating that into my head. Now, I used to go to meetings all the time. By then, I'd lost my house. I was taking the bus, going to meetings. I was eating meals at the ROXBURY meeting where we had great cooks. They cooked up spare ribs and water. Some of you remember, water. We had ribs and sandwiches there. And I'd be going to these meetings and waiting for this letter to go to prison, see? And nothing was going so good for me. And I kept saying to this guy, my sponsor, I don't know. I go to these AA meetings and the guys get up there and they tell these wonderful stories. 3 years ago, I was sleeping on Venice Beach under a cardboard box, and today I'm the head director at Universal Studios. You've all heard them here, and nothing was happening. That's my Ferrari out there. Last night there was a Ferrari in front of Brentwood, parked in the red, of course. You know. Yeah. Did you see it? Yeah. Probably a loan car too, you know what I mean? But anyway, and I'd hear these stories and nothing was happening for me. Everybody else is getting a girlfriend, a house, an apartment, a car, nothing was going on. I'd call this guy up at night and I'd tell him what was going on. I'd say, Hal, nothing's happening. He said, well, just don't drink and go to meetings. I'd say, well, but I'm waiting for any day I'll get this letter to start a prison sentence. And, well, just don't drink and go to meetings. Do you think I'll ever get a car? Just don't drink and go to meetings. I'd like to have a girlfriend. Well, just don't drink and go to meetings. Whatever I told them, they said, just don't drink and go to meetings. And these old guys at ROXBURY would take me for coffee after, and they'd punch you in the chest, like they'd say, like you're a dummy. They'd say, you don't drink no matter what. Can you remember that? I say, yeah. Well, repeat it. I said, you don't drink no matter what. They said, okay, you could go now. You know, and Nothing was happening. So one night I call my sponsor up and I tell him about nothing going on and this isn't going on, that's going on. And every few minutes, I could hear he's not saying anything. I think he was just nodding his head going, And I'd say, what do you think? See, because unlike all the rest of you, I had problems when I was new. I wanted answers. I didn't want to hear this stuff. Well, just don't drink and go to meetings. Just read the book. I'd say, what do you think? And after I'd get done, he'd say, well, let me ask you something. He says, are you sober today? I'd say, well, yeah. I'd say, okay, goodbye, and just slam the phone. Isn't this the bottom line? Isn't this what it's all about? Are you sober today? Are you sober today? All the rest going on in our life is just plain nonsense. Because if you're not sober today, if I'm not sober today, I'm in Forest Lawn Cemetery. If we're not sober today, there is no meeting here. And by all rights, I should have been dead years ago if it weren't for the grace of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you drank like me, you should have been dead too. But we have this gift that we were given, this gift of a new life. And after 3 years, I got a letter to start my prison sentence. And I went down with a couple members of AA to stand before the judge. It was a different judge. And this prosecutor, who hated me and wanted to see me in jail, got up and told the judge, Your Honor, we have heard that Mr. Cohen joined some kind of a religious order, and he's not hanging around all these crooks and mafiosos. And they put it over for a month and checked me out, and they found out that I'd become sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they told me I didn't have to go to prison after all. I could go in this, what they call work furlough program, over in the jail, where you go in, they let you out every morning to go to work. You go into the jail and you get out, and I go to work. You were not allowed to go to home or to the doctor or to a restaurant or anything. You had to go from the jail to your job. But I knew I couldn't stay sober for 6 months without Alcoholics Anonymous. So every morning, a few guys told me, we're going to break the jail rules. Just make sure you're not being followed. And they used to meet me halfway between the jail and my job and bring a big book, and we'd have a meeting. And you shared your experience, strength, and hope with me when I couldn't come to you. I got in this job sweeping a used car lot. But because you told me to get a job, any job, that I had to get a job. So I got in this job sweeping a used car lot, but I felt I hadn't hit bottom because it was a Beverly Hills used car lot. So every morning I'd go there and you guys would see me, and life began getting better. You just said, you don't drink no matter what, just go to meetings and work the steps. And life got better, and life got better, and life got better, and life got better. I could stand up here tonight and tell you these gold Cadillac stories that you hear, but they don't matter because you told me that we had to make a trade in sobriety. We had to trade some of these material things that we thought were important to us. We had to trade those for some tranquility, some serenity, some peace of mind. You told me that I could not change how I was feeling inside by rearranging my external circumstances, like getting a new car or a girl or money. I couldn't change how I was feeling inside by getting things out here any more than I could change my handwriting by getting a different ballpoint pen. You kept beating that into my head. And today I could tell you that all of us in this room, I wanted to talk about wealth. Somebody asked me to. Bernard Baruch, who was President Franklin Roosevelt's advisor, said, he said, the only real wealth is health. This is what we are given in Alcoholics Anonymous: mental, spiritual, and physical health. We are a lot richer, each of us, in this room tonight than a whole lot of people out there who think they're okay because they got some bucks. You and I have something far more valuable that no one can take from us. People can take your money, your girlfriend, your wife, your house, your car, your retirement plan, but no one on this earth can take your sobriety. No one can take my sobriety from me except me. That's the one guarantee you give me. So if any of you are here hurting tonight, please stay here with us until the miracle happens for you, because your miracle may be going to happen tomorrow. And if you go out tonight, you're going to miss your miracle. And your miracles will happen one after another, as they have happened for me. I got my law license back years ago, and I try to make my living as a lawyer again, but I've never been able to find the right words with which to thank you guys for giving me a life that I never dreamed I could ever have again. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.